All right, you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
So Daffy Duck and Elmer Fudd break into a distillery. Daffy turns to Elmer and says, "Is this whiskey?" Elmer says, "Yes, but not as whiskey as robbing a bank."
That's a great joke. That's a great joke. I love it.
Not as whiskey as robbing a bank.
So something I just don't understand is how people travel with. I'm a Midwesterner. I need my bags. I need a pair of clothes or set of clothes for every day. These are just things I need when I travel. And when I was in Europe recently, all of these European travelers with their impossibly small bags that they're traveling for like a month, it kind of makes me mad, to be honest with you.
Milton makes fun of me. My husband makes fun of me because I am a bag lady. So like ball tournaments, and I get why moms have wagons. Like I would be a wagon mom if my husband would let me be a wagon mom, but he won't let me be a wagon mom. So
you're a bag mom instead.
I'm a bag mom instead. So like for instance, this past weekend we had tournaments in Great Bend and Great Bend. There's a town that I keep mixing up with Great Bend and I can't think of it. But anyway, we had a tournament. And so I had my camera bag, my book bag that had like a small cooler in it and snacks and extra change of clothes for Madeline, sunscreen, like all the regular things. And then I had Madeline's bag, and Madeline's bag has like her Play-Doh, her Barbies, like her blanket, things to do whatever with. And then we have the 2 chairs. And then the next day was my camera bag, the cooler bag, the snack bag, because we were potentially going to be there all day if the boys won. We had a game at like 9:30, and then we didn't play until like 2. So I had to pack like sandwiches and snacks and all the 9 yards. And then of course it was like 50 degrees. But so I am a bag lady, so I get it. Like for instance, I was leaving this morning and Milton's like, "Waiting on you," because the kids are outside playing and he's outside. I'm like, "I got to get all my stuff." He goes, "What stuff?" I'm like, "Well, I've got my bagel, I've got my coffee, I've got my purse, I got Madeline's T-ball bag because she has T-ball today, so we have to go there right after work. I've got my coat that I have to wear later today. Like I have a lot of stuff."
I mean, I wouldn't judge, but I guess I also have a lot of stuff. I just keep it in my pockets.
Oh,
so now I'm going to show you what's in my pockets.
What's in Gus's pockets?
So I have my AirPods because I like to watch videos when I'm like eating and stuff. I have my space pen, which I have carried a space pen for years. If you don't, they're kind of expensive, but they last a long time and they fit in your pocket really well when they're like a bullet shape kind of.
What can you define what a space pen is for those who don't know what a space pen is?
Yeah, you've asked the right person.
I know.
So a space pen uses a pressurized cartridge so that it claims, so you can write with this in space. You can write underwater. You can write in oil. So it's just a much more versatile pen. And so that, the American space program spent millions of dollars developing this technology. And what they always say is the Russians used a pencil. The full story, though, is that pencils aren't allowed in space because when a pencil breaks, that lead then is flying around in the capsule or whatever. So it's a huge problem. So that's my space pen. You can get these online or you can get them at the Cosmosphere in Hutchinson, where they have it in their gift shop. Okay, so that is the space pen. I have my phone in this pocket. I have my wallet in this pocket. And I have my handy dandy set of keys. So this is all
That's
Gus
not
needs.
that much stuff.
But it is a lot to sit on.
It is a lot to sit on.
It's probably not good for my posture.
You might as well just leave all that stuff on the table now.
Okay, fine.
And try to put it back in your. Just put it on the table. Okay. Just put it on the table. It's okay. It doesn't have to look perfect. We have a coffee table for a reason. People listening don't know that your stuff is on the table.
But those watching do. And that's all that matters. Welcome, Curious Kansans, to another episode of Ask a Kansan. Today is an interesting episode in that we have a guest who came to us with something to talk about.
Yes. So it's us like interviewing. We got a chance to interview her a little bit, but she wanted to bring some things that just went through the Kansas Legislature, legislate that word.
Yep.
And just kind of bring it to our attention, Kansas attention, just things that we probably don't know what's happening on a state level. And she did run for state representative, right? For District
right.
69, which is Saline County or Salina. These are
And
things that I probably should know.
But she's still really passionate about what's happening and keeping people informed. And I am willing to bet that if you're watching this and you're a Kansan, you probably don't know a lot of the things she's going to talk about.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
So without any further ado, here is Lori Blake.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Welcome.
It's going.
Good.
How are you guys?
I'm
I'm
good.
just fine.
Good.
I'm Sydney. Have we
think
met?
Have we ever officially?
I don't think so.
Like we should have.
Probably.
I don't think we have. So.
Oh, welcome. So how's it going?
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
I think I know everyone that knows you, but I don't think you and I have ever, like, my mom is Joyce Volk.
Yes. I know
Okay.
that.
I didn't know if and a lot of people
Yeah.
are like, yeah, you're Joyce's daughter. I'm like, yeah, I have no idea who you are. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I am 100% understand that because my dad is the same way, and guess you probably can relate to that as well.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
All of us kind of have that.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
welcome.
Thanks.
So for our listeners, tell us a little who you are, what you do. Give us a little background.
Okay. Well, I'm Lori Blake, and I guess I would describe myself as a community activist.
Okay.
I've done a lot of work in human services. Born and raised a Kansan, and Saline County has been home the majority of my life. Have lived other places just for short amounts of time. Bethany College grad. So we won't hold that Wesleyan business against you, I guess. I'm also United Methodist. So we have that in common, that's a great common thread in the connections that I guess we as humans get to experience in life. And so that comes out in my faith. Right now, I just do a bunch of part-time contract work trying to leave this place better than I found it, I guess.
Love that.
Yeah.
Where'd you get the passion for that?
I think my faith.
Yeah.
I grew up in a home where serving others was what we did. My mom's an early childhood educator, and then she worked at the school as the secretary for 29 years, and taking care of other people kind of has always been her gift, and I think that landed in me a little bit. My dad was a counselor for people struggling with chemical dependency, and then ended up at Bethany as the career services director. But everything we've always done has been wrapped up in community. I live in this area, and my husband and I own the gas station there, and
Oh, okay.
we love taking care of our little community there. So Merlin's our neighbor. Yeah.
How do you're a mom, right?
I am.
So how do you kind of teach your kids, the passion that you have and kind of leave that with them to hopefully they want to leave this world a better place than what it started to?
Well, I think probably just through my actions. We created opportunities of service for them, and graduate from Southeast Saline High School, where you go to school kindergarten through 12th grade. That was not my experience. We moved to the community, so we're kind of implants. But that experience of being known and just giving back to the place that invests in you. My kids are freshmen in college, 21 and almost 23-year-old. And so we're just starting to see what that looks like in them as they make choices for themselves and how they choose to use their time. But, my husband and I both, it's just always been about our actions, I guess. They have obviously have the expectations that we have provided 4-H opportunities in church and school, encouraging them to be leaders. But, we're all on our own little path too.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
We fight over questions.
Don't fight.
When you hear it means we're both about to say hopefully the same thing, but
Yeah, don't fight.
So I wonder who would win.
I have no doubt that you would win.
Sorry, intrusive thoughts are winning today. So you mentioned that you are a community activist. What are the things that you're most passionate about in fighting for?
I think all human rights are at the center of the choices of how I've invested my time and energy. Education is 100% like the core of everything that I do. When I was growing up, everybody was like, oh, Lori, you should be a teacher. You should be a social worker. And I ran the other direction. And I got my degree in communications with an emphasis in business. And I worked for 1 year in the private sector as an entrepreneur, HR professional before I was like, is this really what I'm meant to be doing right now? And ended up in social services, working for CAPS for 4 years the first time. And so being a child advocate and teaching parents about just how to keep their families whole and how to recover from trauma and bad things that happen in life, and really just creating those systems within the family structure. I was really involved with an organization called Future Homemakers of America in high school, which is so antiquated.
It is.
It is now the Family, Consumer, and Career, Community, and Consumer Leaders of America, which is so much more on point of what they're trying to teach is how do you lead in your family's home and in your community as a leader. And so I think those family values are always at the center, but family looks different for me. It looks different for you. It looks different for you. And operating from a place of non-judgment and that, really normal is not a real thing. Normal is only what becomes that to yourself. There are societal norms, obviously, but people are a lot of times say, well, I'm not normal. Well, none of us are.
None of us are.
What we identify with there. So then I got to work in the education system for a while for Salina Public Schools and learned more about the business world, creating partnerships between schools and the business community, doing fundraising. And during that time, public education dollars were being cut. And so I thought that would probably be my parenting gig. I had 2 kiddos when I just gotten back from maternity leave with my second, when I got the call that my program was being eliminated from the district because they needed to find $2 million to cut from the budget.
Oh, wow.
And so that was in 2004. And God just kind of led me into the next thing, which was working with individuals with disabilities. And the disability support world is something I didn't know a lot about before I stepped into case management. But there's where I got to be a social worker without having the degree and did that work for 4 years before kind of heading back into the HR role within a social services structure. So I think God has really led my career to use my administrative gifts, but yet being able to educate and use that passion for serving others in a way that just feels authentic to myself, but also in trying to help people better themselves as well. So did that for 11 years before returning to CAPS as the executive director, where I served for 10 years, and just left that in 2023 so that I could run for state office, which didn't pan out. So, we're just always on a little journey of self-discovery and how we can then use those relationships in a different way to continue moving forward.
But what's the biggest thing that you learned from the election last year?
The biggest thing is we are way more alike than people want to admit.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love that so much.
It's a great takeaway.
Yeah. So the only thing that wasn't great about that process was the outcome.
Yeah.
And really it's okay because it has allowed me space to do some other things that I would never have probably had time to pursue otherwise. And not having structured time has not been something I've ever had in my life. And so figuring out how to live without I have to be somewhere at a certain time every day of my life and manage that space has been really interesting to think about. went to school to be a journalist. So some of what I learned is also at the door. People don't have sources for information. They don't know what's truth and what's not truth, and they don't know where to look for truth or who to trust and who to believe. And the individual conversations were just so powerful. I knocked, I think it was 3,000 doors between July and November last year. And honestly, I can say there were maybe 2 negative experiences out of every single one of those experiences. So I think when we do this and we sit down and we talk to each other, we can find things that we have in common. And that's where we need to start. It's what we have in common.
Totally agree.
Because when those relationships are formed, we can do so many things.
I think, what you just said is so well aligned with what we want this podcast to be. And we don't consider ourselves to be journalists or anything like that.
Remotely.
But giving people a platform to tell their story and to raise the issues they want to raise. That's why we're here. And speaking of that, you reached out to us.
I did.
And you had something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So I am really concerned about the engagement. I think at the door, the thing that was most startling to me was the lack of understanding of how state government actually impacts our daily lives. And, I'd open the conversation generally. I'd say, "Hi, I'm Lori Blake. I'm running for the House of Representatives. And I'm here just to listen to you and to hear what you're concerned about." And the majority of people would be like, giving me this weird look, like, "Oh, well, I haven't really thought about that." And so I think we just get so wrapped up in just our daily lives that we forget that we have people making decisions that do impact us every day. And so I thought this could be a really cool opportunity to talk about some of the things that just took place in the State House, how people can get access to information and how they can engage with their locally elected officials, because it matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break and then we'll dive into that.
Okay.
This episode is sponsored by Renaissance Cafe. Serving Northern Italian cuisine prepared with a fresh, contemporary influence, the Renaissance Cafe is one of Kansas's favorite restaurants. Whether you're planning a romantic dinner date, a family celebration, or an intimate meal with friends, the Renaissance provides a unique dining experience with an old-world atmosphere. Open Thursday through Saturday evenings, the Renaissance Cafe is located just south of Salina in Assyria, Kansas. Visit renaissancecafeassyria.com to book your reservation today.
Welcome back. So what's been happening? You said you had some topics to talk about. So
I just I ran for office because I care about this place and I want our community to have representation. I did not run because I want to be a politician. I did not run because I have real strong ties to a political party. And so the information that I wanted to share today really had to do with what just took place in Topeka and the things that passed and how that might impact our local lives here from a completely just place of what passed, not from a political lens at all. So I am a subscriber to the Sunflower State Journal. Do either of you know about that publication?
I've heard of it.
I don't think I have. I don't know anything about that.
Well, I'm giving Brad and his wife a big plug because he has, since 2018, has been reporting on all things and only things that take place in our State House.
Oh, cool.
And it is completely an unbiased source. Like, it is not...
It's just the facts.
...leaning one way or the other. This is what happened at the State House today. And... So the source of information that I'm sharing today really is from his summative article at the end of the legislative session that just wrapped up a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will show you front and back pages here.
Wow.
Like,
is this a link that we could share with people?
It is.
Okay.
And I'll get that to you. But you see the fine print.
Yeah,
this is the result of our
print.
Legislative work. And so one of the things that Clark Sanders, who I ran against and is our representative for the 69th district, he's so right that, so many things pass that are not argumentative or divisive. They pass with very few dissenting votes. And those things rarely get a lot of attention from our news because people that are writing our news are trying to sell something, whether it's advertising space or get readership, subscriptions, whatever. And so I'm going to tell you, as I'm telling you what passed, I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about that vote ratio, because most of these things weren't very contentious items. And that's something that I don't think we talk enough about either. They are in alphabetical order. So I am not prioritizing some of these things, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to highlight some of the things that I think we should be paying attention to here locally. So the first one is about artificial intelligence and sexual exploitation. There was a bill that passed to expand the crime of sexual exploitation of a child to include artificially generated images of children. And so that is a big win as a child advocate in the work that I have done.
That gives me the heebie-jeebies.
I'd never even considered it.
Yeah. So at CAPS, one of the things that they do there and at the Child Advocacy Center, they respond to victims of child abuse. And so I would say to parents that are listening to this, get engaged with your kids' technology, because there's such a huge opportunity for grooming. And it is startling what can happen there. My kids thought I was just the meanest parent ever. They didn't get cell phones until they were driving themselves to school, and they literally were the last kids in their classes at Southeast Saline.
That's our daughter's the same way, our oldest.
Yeah. You're paying for an extension to communicate with your kids, and there's a lot of ways to do that without a smartphone. Yes, they need to learn how to use technology responsibly, but there are things that you can do in order to protect your precious treasures from the realities of the world. So there's my little CAPS plug for the day.
I could go on about that topic just in general.
Yeah,
but
there's so much information about it that a lot of people don't understand or know about. So anyway, that bill passed unanimously on both sides of the House and the Senate.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, no arguments
glad
there.
no one argued against that.
For sure, right? Let's see. There was a bill. Obviously, the big work of our legislature is to pass a budget. And a lot of people don't know that. Also, I was going to backtrack a little bit for those of you that forgot your government lessons of how this works. So a bill has to pass by a majority in the House and the Senate. Okay, so there's 125 people that represent us in the House of Representatives, and there are 40 in the Senate. So that means you got to have 21 in the Senate that say yes, and you have to have 68 in the House that say yes. Both of those things have to happen on the same bill before they go to the governor. And then the governor affirms by saying, yes, I'm going to sign this, or silently agrees by not signing it and not vetoing it to allow it to go into effect. So if she vetoes it, since we have a woman governor right now, if Governor Kelly were to veto it, then it goes back to the House and the Senate. And if they have 2/3 majority votes to overturn her veto, then it becomes law. Okay, so some of those things will happen in what we're going to talk about.
Is it also the same as the federal government where you have to have a larger majority just to bring the motion to the floor? Or is that different?
It has to come out of committee, generally speaking. I mean, you can have some motions from the floor, but most of the time things are referred to committee. They come out of committee with affirmations. And so some of these things that are on this page literally died in committee because they either the chairperson of the committee didn't give it voice, or didn't put it on the agenda for discussion, or did, and there just wasn't enough interest in it, or there wasn't opposition that didn't seem like something the committee wanted to pursue further. So a lot of things can just go away in that process. And that's why it's really important to have communication with our people that are up there leading our laws. So this year, the budget bill actually was something that Governor Kelly vetoed, and it went back to the House and the Senate, and they overrode the veto. So it is a huge package that talks about funding anything to do with state government and lots of things locally as well. And I'm not going to get into the weeds about that, but most of the things this year were pretty positive, and I look at it through the lens of human services and public education, taxes. how that impacts us. I heard a lot at the door from people that need some property tax relief. And so that was one of the things that they were trying to accomplish. And there's just really not a lot that can happen at the state level around property taxes because most of those dollars are generated by your local county, cities, and schools.
Yep.
Library boards. And let's see, what's the other one that's a taxing authority? Our extension districts.
I did not know that.
Yes, if you look at your property tax valuation, you have a Central Kansas extension district on there that is levying taxes as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So, they passed campaign contribution increases, which is very interesting to me. We haven't done that since I think early 90s. There hasn't been a level change of how much legally somebody can donate to a campaign. So you hear about all this fraud in campaign finance. As a candidate, what I learned is there's no way for a candidate to have fraud. Like we have to report every dollar that somebody gives to us if it is more than $50. You have to assign a name to it. And you report that to the Ethics Commission. Where the fraud comes in and where the dark money comes in is through our political action committees, because that information is not public information. So that has been a really interesting learning process. And so if I run again, I'll have the ability to raise more money because the individual limit during a normal election cycle right now for a state house is $500. So there's not a lot you can do with that. The money comes through the parties or a political action committee. A political action committee cannot give a candidate money. If you get things in the mail, this is another interesting learning. If you get things in the mail, you need to read who's sending them. So it may have a picture of Lori Blake on it, but if it doesn't say this is approved by candidate Lori Blake, that doesn't mean that I sent it.
That's crazy and terrifying.
And you have as a candidate, you have no control over that. When other people are saying things about you, there are no laws that say that you can't.
So you see all those
flat out lie about somebody. So I was really proud of Clark and I in our campaign and the way we approached that work together last year, because there's just no place for slander, in my opinion. Like the body needs to be representative of somebody's work and who they are in the community.
It's counterproductive. I feel like it would take more effort than to, you know what I mean? Anyway.
It's great. I never heard of, did you guys actually talk about that? Like you and Clark?
We did not formally make an agreement, like sit down, have that conversation. But at one of the community forums, we both pledged that to one another, that in our campaign, the things that we had control over, it was not going to be about doing anything other than telling our own story. And yes, I pointed out some things, his voting record, things like that are public record. But it wasn't a personal attack on who he is as a person. He was always very respectful to me in that way, acknowledging that we have just different viewpoints on some things. And I think, that's what we need to be doing as leadership, is having productive conversations about problems and figuring out how we can solve them.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's incredible learning in that realm. This is great for us. They passed a law that law enforcement can check our car insurance status immediately and verify that instead of just relying on the data that we give when we register our vehicles. So I think that does a couple of things. Like, how many times do we not have the right card with us, but the policy number's the same? If you get pulled over for speeding, maybe you've never been pulled over for speeding.
No, I got pulled over because I accidentally let my registration lapse. That was a fun ticket.
Well, there you go. You learned something.
I did learn. I learned a lot. I learned that my car is one in September and one in April. Not both of them in April.
Oh, that would be a stretch. There you go.
Well, there you go.
It happens sometimes.
Thanks, McPherson County.
So I thought that was really that's a great bill that passed. We also have really complex administrative structures for some of our statutes, and so super excited. There's going to be an office for early childhood, and that's going to bring together all the functions around early childhood under one umbrella. Right now, so before July 1 of 2025, the Kansas Department for Health and Environment is who does the licensure for childcare. The fire marshal oversees the
Inspections.
Safety inspection for fire-related things. The Department of Education is overseeing the
Curriculum.
standards, yes, that they administer. So we have all these different layers within our state structure, and so this will streamline that and make it more effective and more efficient. That is very exciting.
I've never thought of that before, because with how much, again, childcare is one thing I could go on and on and on and on about. I've never, that's never occurred to me, like a child care center that has to do all of those different things has to have 4 different or 3 different entities sign off.
And then you deal with
things.
the Department of Revenue for taxes, and there's just all these different structures that impede. And so we talk about access to child care. There's an association that's the resource and referral for the entire state. It's called Child Care Aware.
Yep, I use them.
Good. Good. They receive funding from lots of different sources. DCF also has a role in child care subsidies. And so that all will fall under one roof now. And I think that will create a lot of just some synergy and to synchronize those efforts. I'm excited about that.
Wow.
That's really cool.
It's a big win. Okay, here's one that we all need to be paying attention to. We have 2 things that passed. I'm going to talk about both of them at the same time that are going to be coming before us for a constitutional amendment.
Wow.
Did you know this?
No.
Okay. So in November of 2026, we will be voting on whether non-citizens should be allowed to vote. And I don't believe it's legal now. So it's going to be interesting because they're just tweaking the language. So I'm anxious to see what that looks like. But that will be coming down the pike in November of 2026. And then the other one that's a constitutional amendment is our Supreme Court elections. So do you know how that happens now?
No.
I'm learning how much I don't know.
I took government in Missouri, so
So you have an excuse.
I
I
have
guess.
an excuse.
Well, in the state of Kansas, currently, our Supreme Court judges are appointed by our governor, and then they are so they're referred by a panel of judges that are peer. The panel is nominated by the governor. The panel then selects the candidates, and then they're affirmed by the House and the Senate. So what is being proposed, the constitutional change, is that we would elect them in a primary.
Oh.
As a body. So I have concerns about that because in primaries, we generally have 10 to 20% voter turnout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just is very concerning to me. All of our judges right now, we have the ability to elect out of office. You've seen judge names on the ballots. And so I think that our system currently in place, for my purposes, I think is working well. But that is a constitutional amendment that will be on the ballot in August of 2026. Wow. So we have 2 elections next year that will impact our states.
Yeah, and that's plenty of time for us all to forget about it. So we got to keep that on the front of our minds.
Yes, I think, educate yourself. Learn about it. Think about the implications. I'm going to talk about one that didn't pass, and that is daylight savings time. It doesn't seem like a highly political thing, but every time it's brought up, it fails.
Which is fascinating because when daylight savings times happens, we're all up in a tizzy.
Yeah.
Especially as parents with tiny children who don't understand time.
Their bodies understand time.
Their bodies
and then it
understand
changes.
time, and then it changes. And then you're like, oh. Or people who have animals. When your cat is waking you up at 5 a.m., you're like, it's not 6 o'clock yet. But according to your cat, it's 5.
Well, at least a cat you don't have to take outside.
Well, my cats go outside.
You have a dog. Oh, your cats, you got to go open the door.
Yeah.
So has that issue become politicized?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's interesting. You know, I would love to just have one time.
Yeah.
My grandpa always said, let's just stay on God's time.
Go, Grandpa.
There is actually scientific research that shows staying on standard time is what our natural body rhythm is. And,
Really?
And there are health implications about that
I've
spring
heard
forward.
People die at a higher rate during those two transition times. So
I'm always in Mexico on a mission trip the week that happens. And so going, I feel like it's not as big of a deal. And then coming back, I have to adjust to 2 hours after being gone for 10 days. And I just as soon not have to deal with that. But let's see. Okay, here's another one. They changed the law for state employees to be able to be hired if they don't have a college degree. There had been a law that was requiring all state employees at a certain level to have college degrees.
At a certain level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And let's see. It says degree inflation has really impacted their hiring abilities. And so they have people who have the qualifications and maybe the work experience and
the ability.
Yeah. And so I think that's a win to think about the candidate as a whole and not having it just be, you know, what does a piece of paper say?
Yeah. Well, Gus and I were part of that generation of if you didn't go to college, you were never going to get a job. Well, Gus went to college, got a job. I didn't go to, I was asked to leave college very politely. And you're supposed to do your homework. They forgot to tell me that.
I think that sounds like a great story.
It is. You should ask my mom sometime. She was real proud of that Christmas that I told her, by the way, because I waited till after Christmas.
You're a smart girl.
We got to go pack up my dorm room. Got kicked out. Anyway, long story short. But with that, it's nice that the few of us that learn the hard way can still get quality jobs.
And that we have a lot of value to get regardless of whether or not you have that degree.
Right.
Like Sydney's made a huge impact here at Feely, and she didn't have to have a piece of paper to prove that to us.
Yeah. My husband has 2 years of college from Kansas Wesleyan. He was going to be a technical theater guy, and Marymount closed the program in the middle, and he really didn't want to leave and pivoted to a different route and is a business owner and has been since 1989. So,
wow. That's a journey.
Yeah. It's just I think that we all have different experiences and opportunities, and it's what do you do with them and how do you use them? And yes, obviously we want our doctors to have college degrees. Yeah. You know, we there are certain roles where you need that technical training in order to do the work. But to not, my entry into the disability support world is a perfect example. Had I been hired 6 months after when I would not have had that job because the law at that time said I needed 6 months experience and it wasn't as defined. 6 months later, they said that 6 months experience had to be 1,040 hours of direct service with individuals with disabilities, which is not bad. That's not a bad standard. I had 6 months experience working with special education programs in the school district, but it wasn't one-on-one individuals with disabilities.
I see.
I gotcha.
So, there are times when you have to have that designation, and I think it keeps kids safe. Thankfully, it worked out okay for me and the people that I got to serve in that time of my life. But okay, let's see what else. The Commerce Department did not have a requirement for background checks.
What?
And there was a really interesting case about somebody that they hired that came from another state. And he actually had a fraud conviction in Pennsylvania. And he worked in our commerce department and eventually left at the commerce department. And there's a whole another story that you all could go explore about that situation. But because of that, they are going to require background checks for.
Seems like a good
Seems
call.
like a good quality.
Yeah.
What was the story of, we had like a code enforcement guy here at the city in Salina who got arrested or something for, never mind. I'll look it up a different time.
Was that at the police department recently?
No, this was like
okay.
when we were in high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about a recent
Yeah.
DUI.
No. Oh, no, not that.
That was an interesting headline.
Yeah. I sent that one to relatives that don't even live in Kansas.
Some things you can't make up. Okay, here's one. Electric hybrid vehicle license fees passed. They increased electric and hybrid vehicle licenses. And initially I'm like, well, why are they doing that? What do you think the reason is?
I don't know, Gus. You drive an electric vehicle.
Well, yeah, I'm really curious about this. Were we paying less before than normal cars?
It's because people that drive gas-operated vehicles pay their taxes with fuel.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So they're just leveling the playing field a little bit there for tax purposes.
As an
Sorry.
EV owner, I approve.
Yeah, there you go. It passed unanimously
Good.
Wow.
in the House and the Senate. So those are the kinds of, or I guess not unanimously in the House. It was 102 to 22 in the House, but unanimous in the Senate. So,
It was all the UV owners that didn't want to pass it in
Right?
the House.
Yeah.
But
Okay, there's a move over law that passed.
Oh, on the highway?
Yeah, well,
I
anywhere.
thought that was already a
Yeah.
thing.
Me too. Guess what? Now they can fine you $75 if you don't. So that was the
catch me
revision.
first.
I'm excited to watch those California, Colorado, and Missouri drivers finally get pulled over for going.
Oh, yeah.
for just
For
staying in the
not
fast
paying
lane.
attention.
And did you say Texas? Texas is really bad
that's
about it,
true.
too.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. Governor Kelly signed into law a bill establishing advanced universal newborn screening program. This includes educational services, screening tests, a follow-up program, and within the limits of available apportionments, medically necessary treatment products for all conditions determined and identified by the state health secretary for infants. And again, this passed unanimously in the House or in the Senate, and 123 to 1 in the House. So this is
Read
providing
Okay.
in vitro screening opportunities
Oh.
for babies.
That seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently that wasn't in law before. So this is my point. Like there are so many things that benefit us as
Yeah.
local people that we have no idea that our legislature is doing this on our behalf and representing us. This one, I think, Gus, you might be interested in. They passed, when I read this initially, I was concerned, but the heading is regulatory sandboxes. Has nothing to do with what you think it's going to be. It's intended for Kansas entrepreneurs to test novel business ideas in a setting where rules and regulations are temporarily or permanently waived so they can experiment with business innovation. And that passed.
Interesting.
Last couple weeks, I've been in the EU, in France, and in Belgium. And when I was in Belgium, I was there for a class visit, and I had the opportunity to visit the European Commission, which is the executive branch, basically, of the EU. And so we visited the Office of basically Innovation. And my takeaway from that visit was that one of the reasons that the United States has been able to outperform the EU in the last 25 years is that even though this office exists to push innovation, there's such tight regulations that innovation just can't flourish. And so, I mean, this sounds like a program that could absolutely have a big impact.
Yeah. So I was, when I was doing my pre-work of whether I was going to file or not and visiting with people locally, I would say the Department of Commerce probably is the one state governmental agency that I had not worked with in some capacity in my professional career. And so I went and I met with your dad and I sat down with him and I was like, okay, Roy, I want to hear in your years of service in creating new business, tell me about what kind of a climate fosters the best entrepreneurial innovation. And he said, there's never been a better time than right now, which, you know, you hear about all the regulation and all the pushback and everything. And so for your dad to say that to me, that was just like a huge affirmation that we are doing some things right in our state and it's not all negative. And I think that people forget that, yes, financially, sometimes things are tough, but we have a lot of creativity taking place and we just need to keep people in our state to keep our economy growing.
And you know, small businesses and startups, they're what really pushes innovation forward and forces the big companies to change their own products and
practices.
So bravo.
Well, and I appreciate your dad's approach over time to think about small communities. Obviously, being in this area, I grew up right across the street from Great Plains Manufacturing as it was still in the 24-hour production. It's when we moved to this area. And so my lullaby were the presses going, and we didn't have air conditioning on the second floor, which is where all of our bedrooms were. So my window was open and that was my lullaby literally every night. And then when they stopped overnight production, it was so quiet.
I'm not sure whether to apologize.
No, I mean, it's just a real interesting evolution. For those of you that don't know, he has taken schools and turned them into manufacturing settings across our state. As he was growing Great Plains Manufacturing.
And the whole idea behind that was that small towns have a lot of really talented people that are dedicated employees that work hard, show up to work. And you know, you don't build factories where it's best to build factories. You build factories where there's people. And those were people that were excited to work. Yeah.
So anyway, that was an interesting bill that passed that I thought tied back to my experience last fall.
Wow.
This is one that Governor Kelly vetoed, and then it was overridden by the House and the Senate. They eliminated the 3-day grace period for voters with mail-in ballots. So they have to be to the office on the day of the election for them to be counted now.
Not postmarked?
Not postmarked. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
So
I mean, that's fair.
Plan ahead.
Yeah.
Plan ahead.
That's the whole purpose of a mail-in ballot, really.
We have to have some deadline. I understand.
Yeah.
But we need, that just increases the need to get out the vote. Yeah.
Yep. I skipped over this one. I'm going to come back to it. They passed unanimously that law enforcement can provide life-saving care to Kansans during an opioid overdose.
Wow.
So
they'll have kits in their cars now.
They were
basically.
Previously, they could not administer Narcan.
What?
Yeah.
They're usually the first on scene.
Right. Well, EMTs could, but not law enforcement.
Yeah, but usually law enforcement, if something, they're the first. They couldn't.
That will save lives for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great decision that
especially if you think like in rural areas.
That is the difference between life and death. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. We all should get trained on Narcan and like it's readily available now.
Yeah, there's a dispenser or you can get it from CKF now, I believe. They have a dispenser.
I do think that training is incredibly important because you can get yourself into a legal jeopardy if you administer that without
100%.
Yeah.
Without knowing anything.
That's something people need to be aware of.
I did read, I know it was this week, it might have just been yesterday, that the opioid epidemic is decreasing and that last year we were back down before the 2019 levels of deaths related to opioid overdoses. So that was good national news.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Fireworks. This is interesting.
And
I'm bringing it up
This
because
one.
I just saw it was on the county commission agenda.
Yep.
This past, or city commission, one of the two. So the governor signed a bill authorizing year-round sale of fireworks, which establishes procedures for retailers to opt into permanent rather than seasonal sales.
We're almost close to Missouri. As someone who went to high school in some college in Missouri, we really love our fireworks in Missouri.
It's true. It was always a destination.
It was, yeah.
It's going to cause a lot of disruption to, both to our evenings, but also to the people who have sold fireworks for fun, you know, or as a small business,
Right.
and don't want to commit to a year-round venture.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that role plays.
For sure. For sure. Okay. This was interesting. So I was following this story closely because the legislature introduced a bill that would make it illegal to use your food assistance dollars for purchasing candy and soda.
I heard about this.
Okay.
One. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And so it was vetoed by the governor because of the her reason for the veto was the interpretation of the business owner was going to have to interpret what is candy.
Yeah.
The soda was pretty clear, but what is candy? Because some of it, you know, if it's based on sugar content, those could technically be like some of the food bars that people eat as meal replacement things. And so she just felt like it was not well enough defined. And since then, it's very interesting. I think it's DCF submitted a federal waiver requesting those two things be removed. It was used as a negotiation tool by the legislature with DCF to get something else taken care of. So
that's no longer.
So they've requested the waiver from feds. It hasn't been ruled on yet.
Interesting.
Okay. Interesting.
So there's different paths that you can change law and policy.
Because even if you think about the soda thing, like I drink a lot of Fresca. I'm pretty sure Fresca is actually soda, but they advertise it as sparkling water.
Mm-hmm.
Is it by the aspartame content? Who knows?
I don't know.
It's, it's obviously so difficult living in an area that is dominated by processed foods.
Yes.
It's challenging to eat healthy already here. And my personal opinion is that rather than trying to legislate solutions on that, we need to try to create better food systems that provide healthier, fresher things.
Yeah, eliminate some food deserts and
yeah. And I'm encouraged by some of the things we're seeing. Like here in Salina, we've had some developments that are very interesting. They're not fully played out, some of them, but
I'll have to tell you about one that I'm working on later.
Excited to hear.
Not related to our conversation today. Okay, let's see here. They passed a bill that bans counties, joint boards of health, or local health officials from prohibiting public gatherings in order to stem the spread of infectious diseases. So this is a throwback to COVID and our legislature's view that was an appropriate response to a pandemic. So that passed.
Interesting.
It is. Very interesting. This one failed. The House voted to reject a proposed amendment to the House to allow credentialed media on the House floor.
They weren't credentialed before?
So this was in response to the House Speaker banning them from the floor this year. And because it's not a law allowing them on the floor, they were trying to seek that right, and it did not pass. So they can be in the House, just like you and I can go sit and observe, but they can't be on the floor of they used to have a reporter area on the floor in the House and the Senate.
I gotcha.
So
interesting.
Big change.
Yeah.
Big change for how we get our information and the access that our reporters have to our elected officials. Okay, here's another one. The Medicaid Inspector General had their powers expanded. They are going to hire 9 new staff members at the cost of $1 million to investigate fraud in Medicaid. Okay, so there was already fraud. There was already an investigator for Medicaid, but this is going to be expanded to statewide health care welfare programs, including cash, food, and health assistance programs.
Interesting. So basically, fraud as in people saying what they don't have and they really do have.
So they're going to spend $1 million. Hopefully, they'll find more than $1 million of fraud.
I guess time will tell.
I guess time will tell. That was an interesting one. The governor did veto that, and it was overridden.
Interesting.
Let's take a real quick break.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back.
Want to spread your organization's message across Kansas? Consider becoming a sponsor. Ask a Kansan has a unique focus on Kansas and its people. By sponsoring our podcast, your organization can reach people from Canarado to Kansas City, Wichita to Washington, and all the great places in between. We have a variety of sponsorship packages available to fit your budget and needs. For more information, visit askakansan.com/sponsorships or call us at 785-571-9507.
And we are back. Sorry.
And we're back. It's just funny how you said it.
We are.
Sorry. Well, we're back.
We're back.
Okay. Well, there's just a couple more things that I thought were interesting from this session that I would like to call to attention. Our income tax structure. So a year ago, they tried to get a single tax rate for all Kansas income taxpayers, and that failed a year ago. And so what passed this year is a very interesting concept to moving towards that single tax rate, but only in years when tax revenues beat inflation. So the bill will cut taxes to 4% flat rate for everyone when the state generates $5.96 billion that come from income tax plus inflation. So that must be the baseline for this year was 5.96. So then plus inflation in years to come.
So is that in the year prior? Or is it, my brain is
Yeah,
like,
my math is
It
not
would have to
mathing.
be.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have to be.
Okay.
Yep. It also keeps taxes from being lowered if the state's rainy day fund dips below 15% of the state general fund tax receipts. So I love how it's being proactive, thinking about what is best practice. Like we need to have savings because I served on the school
Dave
board.
Ramsey all the way.
Fiduciary responsibility.
I served on the school board in from 2010 to 2021. And during those years of service, actually that's not right either. It was 08, like 13 years, do the math. During those years, we did not have a rainy day fund and we were not able to meet our obligations. When I first worked at CAPS in 2015, we had state grants and they were supposed to pay us within 60 days. So think about this. Nonprofit entity has to pay somebody the grant funds before they get reimbursed for the work. So you're putting the cash out and then you get paid.
Yeah.
And they had 60 days from the date you billed it. So that's not from the date you paid it. They had 60 days from the date you billed it. And in that time frame for about 3 years, they were not in a position that they could pay their bills.
Wow.
So that impacted our employees. That impacted me personally. I literally was holding my paycheck because I didn't want my staff to not have their pay. And so, I applaud them for putting that clause in there. I am concerned about a flat 4% tax rate for everyone. I think that there's
I'm just giggling at the official name for it is the Rainy Day Fund.
Yeah.
We couldn't think of another name for Rainy Day Fund.
Hey,
it's fine.
Call it what it is.
Everyone understands it, but I just think
it's very Kansas to not go fancy and just keep it something we all understand.
It's not, the Kansas
Kiss
savings, I don't know, situation or something. I don't know.
I think that covers about all of them. Oh, there is one more, I guess. we've had a slide into remote work since COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one thing they were trying to eliminate was remote work from branches of the legislature. And instead of just banning it, thankfully, they said that the budget was reworded so that it directs state agencies to prepare a report on how many employees are currently working remotely. So I think data speaks. And so let's get the information before we have knee-jerk reactions. Because is it really a problem or is it just a perception?
Wow.
So,
Yep.
Anyway, those are some things that took place. All in all, it was a pretty positive session, I think.
It's great. I wonder how many Kansans are aware of when the legislative session is, and that because now to the end of the year, am I correct in thinking
they're not in session?
Yeah.
There's no bills that are enacted. So there's work that's being done. There's a lot of interim committees that meet outside of session. So once you get elected to the legislature, you get appointed to a committee. And that is why I declared a party when I ran, is because if you do not have a party, you do not have the right to serve on a committee. That's up to the will of the speaker and your leadership.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
That seems kind of counterproductive in my opinion, but whatever.
So if you want to be effective, I mean, that's one of the reasons I made that decision. But anyway, so that starts, I think it's the second Tuesday of January is when the session begins. And then they are supposed to be done by the end of May. This year, they set their session on a fast track and they were done by the end of April. What it looks like is they gavel in. It's supposed to be on a Monday. A lot of times they gavel, the gavel happens, but a lot of our legislators aren't there. Most committee meetings take place Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which is interesting. They gave themselves a
4-day weekend.
Well,
oh no,
yeah. I mean, they're traveling, so I mean, you think about the fact that they're representing our entire state. They don't live there for those.
That's true.
Those 5 months,
You're coming from Western Kansas or East.
Right. And most, I mean, if you want people that have other jobs to be representing us up there, I think it's hard otherwise, which is why I think our legislature looked the way it did for a long time. They actually have kind of a living wage right now, which is lovely. This is the first year. I think it's $59,000 to be a House rep base.
Oh, okay.
So you can have people that actually could make that their career in order to represent us instead of, I think before it was like $23,000.
Oh, wow.
So how else can you
support
serve,
yourself, your family,
So
and serve
you
your
get somebody that's
community.
either uber wealthy or retired.
Yeah. And hopefully that means that they have more time to spend with constituents, learning
Right.
about the issues in their area. And then, one of the things I learned last year, I went to DC for a class, and how important it is for members of Congress, either state or national, to have time to interact with each other.
Yes.
Because that's how consensus is formed. That's how issues are dealt with.
Relationships are built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so hopefully that will enable some more of that as well.
Yeah, I think so too. I thought it was a lot of people were critical of that, but who could afford to go do that and be gone for 4 to 5 months at a time, and sacrifice that in wages. So I appreciate that they did that for our elected officials.
Definitely. Well, I think, thanks so much for this conversation and
Yes.
for bringing all of that information, because I think there's a lot of people that are understandably a little jaded about politics in general. And honestly, if you're tuned into the news, a lot of what you see there is not so positive and not so maybe complete information a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so I think the more we can do to provide such information and just encourage people that your government is working for you. It may not be perfect. It may not always meet your expectations or standards, but there are people that really genuinely care and are trying really hard to make it work.
Yeah. So, engage, read all the sources you possibly can.
Credible sources.
Yeah.
Like, we'll put a pin in that.
There's a whole nother conversation we can have, Sydney and Gus. But I will send you this link. It's the Sunflower State Journal is where I got this information. And the title of the article is What Passed and What Didn't. Kind of like the rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Just call it what it is.
Call it what it is.
I hope we can have you back again next year, and if there's other things that are happening in state politics or even beyond.
I even think like the way our local issues are covered. Sometimes we forget that like you can go to your city commission meetings, you can go to your county commission meetings. Those are open meetings. You can go to the school board. You can go to the state house. Those are our governance bodies, and people are elected to represent us. They want to hear from us. They want to know what's important to the people. And so I just challenge you to engage.
Beautiful.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks
Well,
for
thank
having
you.
me.
Well, that was our conversation with Lori. I really appreciated kind of the positivity she brought to the conversation, and the knowledge that, like, justifiably so. There's a lot of news about what's happening in Topeka that isn't always very positive, but that doesn't mean that there aren't positive things being done there. And I think she eliminated that for us.
And the refresher of how government works, because again, I took government in Missouri, so my government is a little different than everyone else's government classes. That, and we watch Law and Order every Friday, so I don't know how much. Thanks, Mr. Gassaw. But yeah, like bringing to the forefront, like this is what's happening, and the other thing is everyone gets so frustrated and like, oh, we don't have a say, or like, go out and vote, talk to your representatives. It starts with conversations.
Yeah.
I get, sorry, I'm gonna get real passionate here for a minute. I get so upset when people are like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I don't have an opinion. No one's gonna listen to me. But if you just have a conversation, a civil conversation, a conversation where you're open to other people's views and they are the same way with you, we could get a lot more accomplished with those things than if we're just being negative.
And to be fair, there are politicians that aren't willing to listen.
Oh, that's true. I'll give you that one.
But I'll say this, that I know and have heard of politicians on both sides of the aisle, both in DC and in Salina and in Topeka, that are willing to have conversations with people they may not agree with everything on. And that's what we should demand from our politicians, is that ability to have a conversation and listen and talk.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, are you ready for another exciting episode of Where in the Rectangle? Our little segment here about surprising places in Kansas and where they are from. How this works is I ask Sydney to guess where the place is. and then I'll tell you a little bit about it. So today's location is Argonia, Kansas.
Oh, jeez.
Where in the rectangle?
Argonia?
Argonia.
I would like to point out that I was today years old when I realized there's a Wichita County and a Wichita City, and
Wichita
they
County
are nowhere
is,
near each other.
Yeah, it's way out west.
Okay, Argonia. That sounds very floral. Argonia.
I love the thought process you put into these.
Well, it sounds like a flower. So Argonia. So I'm gonna go with, like, there's like prairie somewhere that this place is at, and I'm gonna go. Where do flowers? There's a lavender festival. Didn't we talk about a lavender festival in a previous episode?
We did.
Argonia. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Southwestern. And why is Feeney County such a weird shape? Sorry, I'm gonna go with Feeney just because it's sticking out to me.
All right, point at that.
Feeney County is right here.
Okay. All right. Well,
it seems very floral to me.
That was a guess. In reality, Argonia is in Sumner County.
Oh,
right
I was
here.
nowhere near close.
Not that far from Cedric, just below.
What county is it?
It is in Sumner.
Sumner. That's kind of, that has a plant vibe to it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're headed to another place where the population is small, the legacy is massive, and the vibes are equal parts prairie charm, to your point, and presidential energy. It's a place you've probably never been, but after the story, you might just want to take a detour. So let's talk about Argonia. Population is around 450 people. It's a quiet little town tucked into the southern third of the state, about 40 minutes southwest of Wichita. You've probably never stopped there. Honestly, unless you're related to someone in town or you got lost on your way to Caldwell, it's probably never come up. But let's rewind the clock a little bit. Not to the 50s, not to the Depression, not quite as far back as the Civil War, but let's go back to 1887. America is still nursing its Reconstruction hangover. The frontier is slowly being tamed. And while men are mostly the ones in office, women, well, they're organizing. They're speaking, they're writing, and in some parts of Kansas, they're even voting, sort of. You see, Kansas was one of the earliest states to give women the right to vote, but only in municipal elections. So in 1887, when Argonia's election rolled around, women could vote for local offices like mayor or city council. But few people, especially men, thought they'd actually run for office. Enter the town's local temperance activists, specifically a young woman named Susanna Medora Salter.
Oh, I know where this is going. I should have known.
Now, Susanna wasn't campaigning. She wasn't actually even running. She was a 27-year-old mother of four, a devout Quaker, and the wife of the town's former mayor. She was well-educated, one of the few women at the time to attend college, and she was known in the community for being sharp, composed, and deeply moral. But some of the men in town, we'll call them the fellas, had other ideas. Apparently annoyed by the local women's Christian temperance union pushing for reform, they decided to teach them a lesson, a little practical joke, if you will. So, this is kind of typical boys will be boys nonsense. So the day before the election, these men quietly added Susanna M. Salter's name to the ballot as a candidate for mayor. Their plan to humiliate her, to prove that politics was no place for a woman. They were sure she would be mortified, and even more sure that no one would actually vote for her. There's only one problem. The joke backfired. When word got out, the Women's Christian Temperance Union rallied hard, and then the Republican Party of Argonia, a male-dominated group, mind you, realized that Salter was actually highly qualified, and they endorsed her. And the next day, Susanna M. Salter was elected mayor of Argonia with 2/3 of the vote. She didn't even know she was on the ballot until Election Day. But get this, at 27 years old, she became the first woman elected mayor in the United States of America. Think about that. Before women could legally vote for president, before suffrage, before women were even allowed to own property in their own name in some states, Susanna Medora Salter was running a town in Kansas. And she did it well. Mm-hmm. She served 1 full year in office, which was customary back then. And by all accounts, she was efficient, gracious, and completely unshaken by the national spotlight. Because yes, national reporters showed up. Her story ran coast to coast. People were stunned. Some were outraged, but many were inspired. After her term, she never ran for office again, but she lived a long life, eventually moving to Oklahoma and living to the ripe old age of 101. So today, Argonia honors its claim to fame with a historical marker, and you can still see the house where Salter lived while serving as mayor. It's a small town, the kind with one church per denomination and probably more tractors than traffic lights, but it holds a giant piece in American history. So yeah. So you knew
I knew that. We talked about that a little bit, I think, in our episode with Adrian Zink, Hidden Histories of Kansas. And I think we chatted about that in that episode. But yeah, once you got going, I was like, oh, that's the town. I think I'm more curious on how they could put someone on a ballot day before. Like, did they not have...
It was a different world.
I guess, yeah, it's a different world than it is today, where you have to run, there's paperwork, you have to hand over, like, your taxes and, like, the whole thing.
Yep.
So...
Well, we will take a quick break, and when we come back, we will introduce a new little segment. Have you heard people in your organization say, we need video? At Feely Creative, we develop videos to drive your marketing strategy. We are problem solvers, crafting messaging and visuals to achieve business goals. Whether you need to share your organization's identity, convey company culture, attract the right people to your team, or put your products on display, Feely will help you communicate effectively and get back to what you do best. Let's get creative. Feely Creative. Okay, welcome back to Ask a Kansan. And if you just joined us, we've been talking about Susanna Medora Salter, the first woman elected mayor in the United States. Now, after I finished researching for that Where in the Rectangle segment, something struck me. Susanna wasn't just a trailblazer, she was a Quaker. And that got me curious. Who were the Quakers in Kansas? Where did they settle? And how did their values shape the place we call home? So that curiosity led me to create a new segment we're going to call Patchwork, Many Cultures, One State, where we're going to explore the rich and diverse communities that have helped make Kansas what it is. Because Kansas isn't just one people, it's farmers and factory workers, immigrants and activists, spiritual seekers, and small town heroes. Some came for land, some came for freedom, some came with nothing but hope in a trunk. And together they made a state. So yeah, we're going to talk about the Quakers. The average person probably only knows about Quaker Oats. Is that fair? Do you know anything about the Quakers beyond Quaker Oats?
I just know they make some really good oatmeal.
Yeah. So rewinding the clock again, we're going to go back before the war. We're going to go to the 1850s.
Wasn't Ben Franklin a Quaker?
I honestly don't know the answer to that.
I feel like some of our founding fathers were Quakers for some
reason. Maybe one of our folks in the studio can look that up for us.
Quakers.
So in the 1850s, the Kansas Territory was a political powder keg, as you may remember. The national debate over slavery was coming to a boil, and the Sunflower State, still not yet a state, becomes a major battleground. Enter the Quakers, also known as the Religious Society of Friends, which may ring a bell if you're in the Wichita area. They were pacifists, abolitionists, and in some ways, quiet radicals. Long before Kansas was even a concept, the Quakers were already opposing slavery, rejecting war, and preaching equality between men and women. And when Kansas opened to settlement, many Quaker families saw not just land, but opportunity for moral action. They settled in towns like Springdale, Hesper, and Lawrence, helping build communities that aligned with their values: fairness, simplicity, nonviolence, and education. Now, Quakers weren't interested in grandstanding. They believed in plain living and high thinking, but that doesn't mean that they were passive. They organized mission schools for Native children, which we must say, there's a complex history there, not very positive. So not everything the Quakers did was positive. But they did create free towns in opposition to slavery. And in 1898, they took over Friends University in Wichita, turning it into a center of learning that's still running today. That name, Friends, isn't just branding. It's the spiritual philosophy at the heart of their worldview. And while their numbers were never huge, their impact was disproportionate. So Quakers have made a mark in less obvious ways. They served in relief efforts after the Civil War, helped establish orphanages and hospitals, and later supported conscientious objectors during World War I and II. Many Friends or Quakers volunteered in civilian public service programs. And of course, one of their own, Susanna Medora Salter, made history when she was elected mayor. So you may wonder, do Quakers still exist in Kansas? They do, although in smaller numbers than before. You'll find Friends meetings in places like Wichita, Lawrence, and in some rural communities where silent worship is still practiced. And I think that's an important thing to kind of point out is the Quakers are very unique in their spiritual practices. I don't have research here to support this at the moment, but do you know where the name Quaker comes from?
Oats? I don't know.
Quaker comes from one of the ways they worship, which involves quaking, physically shaking. So yeah, have to look
Quaking
that up.
In my boots.
There's a number of well-known Quakers out there, including U.S. Presidents Herbert Hoover and Richard Nixon, which it's interesting that especially Nixon was a Quaker, because I would say the way he operated was not very Quaker-like. But yeah, the Quakers are kind of everywhere, and they've done a lot of amazing work over the years. And they were and still are here in Kansas.
I think I'm more interested that FU in Wichita is a Quaker because it's just fun. Friends University.
Yeah, and let's just be glad that they've moved on from the acronym that they used to have, Friends University of Central Kansas.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, at least I don't know if that ever. I think that might be more legend than truth, but that is a legend that goes around sometimes.
It kind of reminds me of. I'm getting real off topic here. The movie Accepted, where it's South Harmon Institute of Technology.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. We're all real mature.
Yeah, we are. So is it safe to say that anything that's like named Friends is probably Quakery?
I would say, yeah, there's a significant chance of that. It obviously doesn't mean everything labeled Friends is, but.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny because right next to it is an ad that says drink olive oil for 7 days. which we all know that Shaq had an experience with that. So sorry.
Poor guy. That was, that was quite a moment. If you haven't, just go to YouTube and search Shaq olive oil, and
that poor guy.
That'll get the job done. He had to take an emergency exit from his
it's the fastest we've seen him run since he quit the NBA.
It was great. So, well, on that happy note, we will call an end to this episode. I sure appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully you can help us kind of spread our message of maintaining curiosity about Kansans and the state as a whole. And if you would direct anybody to our podcast, or if you have anybody that you think would be a good guest, please send them to us.
Yep. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It's the best way you can support our work. AKA, I got that from SB Mowing, but that's his line.
Major Sydney jealousy.
Oh, I love that man. In a weird fan way. That sounded really odd. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.
See ya.